transferred to building X was 269.
That's the
Yeah, that's what I'm
Rise.
Okay, are we ready? Okay, from the jury, please. You may be seated.
Today's next witness is Lieutenant Bill Kolb.
You raise your right hand. So you solemnly swear that the testimony I'm about to give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Bill Kolb, K-O-L-B.
And what's your current occupation, sir?
I'm a lieutenant with the Wausau Police Department.
How long have you worked for the Wausau Police Department?
24 years.
Were you employed by the Wausau Police Department in October of 2010
Yes, I was.
and also in October of 2011?
Yes.
When, in 2011, were you also a lieutenant at that time?
Yes.
Was it a different version of lieutenant?
Yes, I transferred from the patrol division over into the detective bureau as a detective lieutenant.
At some point in time, did you become involved in the investigation of the disappearance and death of Stephanie Lowe?
Yes, at about that time when I transferred into the detective bureau about a year after the 2010 incident.
So your understanding was that she disappeared on October 10th of 2010?
Yes.
And you became involved a year later?
Yes.
Did you ultimately identify Kristopher Torgerson as a person of interest in this case?
Yes, we did.
And is the person that you know to be Kristopher Torgerson here in the courtroom today?
Yes, he is.
I'll stipulate to identification.
Thank you. We've heard some testimony just before about some identifying tattoos that Mr. Torgerson has that would be readily visible. What tattoos are those?
I know him to have two tattoos. one on the scalp of his head, the top of his head, of a spider web, and then a tattoo on the side of his neck, right side, I believe, of a tarantula.
And did you know Mr. Torgerson to have a name or an alias that he used?
Yes.
And what was that?
A number of people referred to him as Spider.
Okay. You've been involved in this case for coming up on 6 years here?
Yes.
And I'm not going to get into every single thing you did on this case. We've had a lot of testimony already to this point. I'm going to talk about just a few things that you were involved in. Were you involved in some interviews with the defendant, first of all, on November 7th of 2011 with Detective Buckman?
Yes, I was.
And again for an interview of the defendant on December 21st of 2011 with Detective Holtz?
Yes.
And then finally on September 7th of 2014 with Detective Holtz?
Yes.
I might have that date wrong. 1 second. I think I wrote it down wrong. 17th.
17th, yes.
Thank you. And to your knowledge, were those interviews recorded
Yes, they were.
and ultimately transcribed?
Yes.
If I were to show you the CDs and the transcripts, would you be able to identify them without going through the whole thing as what, as an accurate, your understanding of an accurate depiction of those interviews?
Yes.
I'm going to show you now what's been marked for November 7th, 2011, the CD number 215, transcript 216. For the December 21st, 2011 interview, CD 217, transcript 218. And for the September 17th interview, CD 219, transcript 220. They've all been previously marked.
Okay.
Those are all your understanding of fair and accurate recordings and transcriptions of the interviews with the defendant?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to leave these 3 paper copies up here in case you need to use them to refresh your recollection at any point in time. I'm going to take the CDs. I'd ask for all 6 of those to be moved into evidence at this time.
There is no objection to any of those 6 exhibits.
I think 216 was already actually moved.
Okay, the 5 exhibits then will be received.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to get back to those interviews in a little bit. I just want to make sure I cover one thing first. As part of your investigation into the disappearance of Ms. Lowe, did you become aware, based on some other witnesses, that there had been a purchase of a shovel or a spade made at a hardware store?
Yes.
And what was the name of that hardware store?
Pinches hardware.
And as a course of, or as a part of the investigation, did you make contact with that hardware store to confirm the purchase of what we now know to be a shovel on October 10th of 2010?
Yes.
And were you given an identical replica of the shovel that was purchased on that date?
Yes, I purchased a shovel of the same make, model, SKU.
And if I showed you that shovel, would you be able to indicate whether it's the same one that you purchased?
Yes.
This has been previously marked and admitted as Exhibit 273. Okay?
Right.
I'll start this approaching with the shovel. Are you able to indicate if that's the same shovel that you purchased?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Now, I mentioned those 3 interviews, and this may get a little tedious, so if you need a break, let me know. But is it safe to say that Mr. Torgerson, throughout the course of the 3 interviews that I mentioned, made some statements that were later learned to be untruthful.
Yes.
And I'd like to go through a couple of topics with you, directing your attention first to the November 7th, 2011 interview that you had with Detective Buckner. Was there a time during that interview, and for counsel I'm referring to page 8 first, in which you had asked Mr. Torgerson when the last time he had been to Stephanie's residence? And when I say Stephanie, I'm referring to Stephanie Lowe.
Yes.
And do you recall if he had indicated how long it had been since he had been there?
I believe he said it was 2 to 3 weeks prior to her missing.
And because we have them recorded, I'm going to let Mr. Torgerson tell you in his own words.
In relation to the time she came up missing, when was the last time you were working with that person?
Oh, it's been like 2-3 weeks. I guess.
Prior to?
Yeah. At least 2 weeks, because that's why I said when the hair got lost up, I didn't go back over there.
And based on your investigation of this case, your current understanding is that Mr. Torgerson had been there more recently than that, correct?
Yes.
The next clip that I want to direct you to, and for counsel, page 10, did Mr. Torgerson indicate to you, and I think this is referenced in the first clip as well, as to his knowledge that Mr. Mahomes was in jail on the date that Ms. Lowe went missing?
Yes.
And to your understanding, that was a truthful statement, correct?
Yes.
You were at jail at the time that whole weekend where she went missing.
Oh, yeah.
And directing your attention for counsel to page 12, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about his friend Rich?
Yes.
And do you now know that to be Richard Hawkins?
Yes, it is.
Did Mr. Torgerson indicate to you anything about Rich's last name?
He had initially told us he did not know Richard's last name. He guessed a couple times at it eventually, but he did not offer up the last name of Hawkins at all.
Okay, and he also, Mr. Torgerson, made reference to Andrea Wadinsky during that particular conversation, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we'll let the jury do that as well.
She didn't go out. She didn't go out until the
No,
morning.
she must stay home with you.
Okay. Was she home when you got home then?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's fired?
No, at my house.
She was at your house?
Yeah.
Oh. So you went out to the bars. First of all, did you go out to the bars with anybody? Who'd you go
My
with?
friend that I brought up here from Alabama.
And what was his name?
His name was Rich.
No. So you know his last name?
No.
In that conversation, did Mr. Torgerson seem hesitant to tell you Mr. Hawkins' name?
I believe so, yes.
In the next relevant portion of the interview, in the state's opinion, did Mr. Torgerson make some comments in addressing counsel to page 14 about his activities of the evening, moving from October 9th into the morning hours of October 10th, 2010?
Yeah, he did.
Did he make some comments about whether or not he was driving at bar time and his thoughts about driving at bar time?
Yes, he was concerned of driving at bar time. He expressed concern of driving his Jeep because it had a cracked windshield. But yes, he said he didn't want to be out driving at bar time.
Did you find out later that Mr. Torgerson had in fact been out driving during that time of night?
Yes.
Objection, speculation. No. Commenting on the evidence.
Sustained.
I will play the clip for this year.
So going back to that night, then you were out with Rich and you guys went breakaway.
Yeah, I think it was right away. And we might have bruisers too. It was going in earlier too. We didn't stay out till closing. Then we went in about making my house, finished drinking at my house like 1:40, 1:20, something like that. I don't read it. I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on it, but I'm pretty sure there was not bar closed for this, I can remember. Why it was that? Because I don't like to travel when bar closed drinking, because the police are out more. So I usually try to tend to stay where I'm at if it's at party closer, or I tend to leave earlier,
Okay.
just because I'm on probation.
So the best you do best yes that night is you're out till almost our time maybe?
Yeah. What's that?
Alright. And then Rich, where did he end up?
So he was staying at my, or me and my family would stay either at my house for a week, and he would stay at her house, and vice versa.
Oh. So then that night you go back
We went to Andrew's house.
to Andrew's house?
Finished drinking.
Okay, with Rich?
Yeah.
Was that, and Andrew was there or wasn't there?
No, she wasn't there. She was at my house.
She was at your house and you're at her house?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Because I didn't want me to wake the kids up, so we went to her house.
Okay. Did you ever go over by her then? That
I
night?
did.
Yeah.
After I left.
After you
That
left,
house.
after you left her house,
Mhm.
then you and Rich go,
No.
Rich stays.
Mhm.
In that conversation, were you attempting to find out the activities of Mr. Torgerson in the late night hours of October 9th and early morning hours of 2010?
Yes.
And throughout the course of your investigation, did you later find out that he took a vehicle up to Wabino area?
Yes.
And did he mention that at all during that conversation?
No.
Directing counsel to page 16 for the next one, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about going up north at some point in time?
Yes.
And in that conversation, did Mr. Torgerson indicate whether anybody went with him up north?
He stated he went alone.
And so what time did you take the Jeep up?
8, 9. I think it was 7:30, 8, 9, something like that. It was like 7, 9.
Who went with you for that?
Just like,
Then how did you know how to come
Sharon
there?
Grace.
When you and Detective Buckner were talking to Mr. Torgerson at that point in time, was it your understanding that Mr. Torgerson was talking about storing the boat?
Yes.
And was he indicating at that point in the interview that that was in the early morning hours of October 10th?
Yes.
Okay. Directing counsel to page 18 and 19 of that interview, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson? You and Detective Buckner have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about him making calls to Stephanie or to her then boyfriend Eve.
Yes. We asked him about his cell phone records.
And what at first did he indicate as to whether or not he called Stephanie's boyfriend E's phone?
He indicated during the early morning hours of some phone records we had showing calls, 6 of them I believe, around the 3 to 4 a.m. hour to E's phone, that there was an initial statement of it being a pocket dial, but then when asked further about that, he said he had another E in his phone and it was a mistaken dial.
Do you remember making any calls to, going back to the calls to, do you remember making any calls to Stephanie on that Saturday night? The possibility?
I don't think so, no. I hit my phone, but I don't.
How about Eve? Would you call E?
That's one. But I wonder if I could die, but I don't think so. I wouldn't think so. I think
You can't remember, so it's
I
possible.
mean, anything's possible, but I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't have no reason to. I have a favorite thing on my phone, which is private dials, but I'm not sure if I had that phone or not. I could have that phone. But I wouldn't have no reason, so.
Next I'm directing counsel to pages 24 and 25 of that same interview. Did you and Mr. Torgerson and Detective Buckner have a conversation as to whether or not Mr. Torgerson had ever helped Stephanie and Eric clean their apartment?
Yes.
And did he indicate at some point that he had helped Stephanie and Eric mop or clean?
Yes, he did indicate that he helped clean their apartment when they moved in.
In your investigation and interviews with Eric Mahomes, did you hear information to the contrary?
Yes.
Well, I'll object, move to strike, that's hearsay.
It was testified to. I understand the objection, but it was already admitted.
It's already been by the jury?
That came in through Mr. Mahomes.
Okay. Overruled.
So if your DNA is in the apartment, where do you think it would be?
I'm everywhere. You trying to say my kids were there? I was there, my Andrew was there. I have to move in.
Oh,
I have to clean up, I have to move in, I have to cook there,
help them clean up and cook and stuff?
when they moved in, I have to move in.
Oh,
And I have them clean up, and that they're in the process of moving in.
okay.
Move the table in, the carpets in, the rug. Everything, it's like everywhere. Unless they cleaned over it, and then, I don't know.
Plus I had,
It was all my DNA. Leave my kids with me, and
Sure. It makes sense, you guys are over there all the time.
well, she wasn't, she went over twice. One time I cooked spaghetti over there, and she came with her kids, maybe.
What did you help them clean up, you said?
Before we moved in. Before they
You know, the apartment wasn't in, like, good condition in there? So what did you have to do to clean up, what kind of stuff did you do?
Throw everything pretty much. It was pretty awful. I guess that was the deal for them to get in, was to get that day and clean up.
So you're there scrubbing?
Yeah, I got on the floors, and we were going to tear the carpet up, I think, and I went and I pulled some of the metal part off of one of the living room floor.
Yeah.
That strips to separate the carpet and the floor. I started pulling that one corner up, see if they wanted to do the carpet or to see if it was hard with the floor through it, because she was telling Mary she wanted to tear the carpet up and redo hardwood.
What was the final decision?
The system is a later, like it was.
So what did you use to clean the floor? The vacuum cleaner or something?
Yeah.
Brush or something?
Not with my brush, just mop the truck floors. I brought the vacuum over. Vacuum.
Had anybody from your office at that point informed Mr. Torgerson that the mop could be an issue in this case?
No.
So that information was volunteered by Mr. Torgerson?
Yes.
Moving next to page 50. Did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson in this interview, you and Detective Buckner, relating to Mr. Torgerson's reasons for moving the boat on October 10th of 2010?
Yes, we did.
Do you recall what, if any, of those reasons were?
I recall him talking about there being snow coming.
Did you, based on your recollection, this was October of 2010?
Of when the,
when the
oh,
incident took place?
yes.
And to your knowledge, was there any snow in October of 2010?
No, I looked back through the, what the weather was during that date of that incident, and then for the week forward, and it was unseasonably warm. I believe on the date of the incident, it was highs were in the 70s, and we were just experiencing an unseasonably warm spell during that time.
The minute you got there, you said something about the snow.
Yeah, because there was lots of snow. It was the middle of October. In October, November comes, snow comes. And because we only had a 2-car garage,
Did you have more conversation with Mr. Torgerson in that same interview about, and I think you referenced this earlier, about the calls to Stephanie's boyfriend, then boyfriend, E. or Eric Holmes?
Yes.
And did he indicate anything additional than what you've already told the jury?
No, just that he had another E in his phone, so it was a misdial.
Before we go any further, did you have the opportunity to look through Mr. Torgerson's phone?
No.
Yeah, why not?
He told us it was possibly at Andrea's residence at that time when we were interviewing him, and we followed up with her, and it was not anywhere to be located.
Did everybody know that? Okay.
Idea why you make that call.
there's another E in my phone.
Who's that?
There's actually 2 E's in my phone.
But how would you make that mistake several more times in the hours of the morning? You have 3:47 and 6 seconds, 3:47 and 30 seconds, 3:55 and 43 seconds, 3:56 and 7 seconds, and 4:33 and 8 seconds, and 4:33 and 37 seconds. Again, calls from your phone to E's phone.
2 E's.
Yeah, very short, and like maybe they went to voicemail. Why would you be calling that? If you know, E is locked up. That'd be another E, but wouldn't you do voicemail?
I'm trying to figure out.
Wouldn't you do?
And during the course of your investigation, you had received, or had you received information about E's phone?
Yes.
And your understanding of the working nature of E's phone, if any?
I knew one of his phones was reported to be damaged. He had told me previously when in an argument he had thrown it and it was damaged.
That same phone, did you have any understanding of its functioning if it was not plugged in?
Yeah, it would only work properly if it was plugged in, is what I was told.
Okay. Now we're moving to the December 21st of 2011 interview. On page 5 to 6 of that interview, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson? And that interview was with Detective Holtz, correct?
Yes.
And during that interview, had you, by this point in time, did you come across some surveillance footage of Mr. Torgerson
Yes.
from the night in question?
Yes.
And did you ask Mr. Torgerson about the clothing that he was wearing in that surveillance footage?
Yes, we did.
Page, please,
5 to 6,
on interview.
December 21st, 2011.
It'd be nice if you give me a call back. I certainly made efforts to call him. But here's you, okay? Do you agree with that? Walking just a quick trip up on near breakaway, okay? And I can't remember this. Is that yours?
From Fremont.
Where is it?
I was a lot of things places that I go to. Because I mean, I'm pretty sure you know that it'd be everywhere. So who knows, I could have left it somewhere. Could have, I invested. gonna tell him,
How you know I'm not at home?
sure be home.
Okay.
Did you ask me where it was?
Yeah.
You wouldn't got on myself, so if fortunately it's not there, you ask me where it is.
Yeah, I was wondering if maybe you knew that I was at home, or if you knew that we had.
I don't know.
How about these shoes?
Sure, they should be home.
And at home you're talking to it on, Any of those shoes aren't at Andrews. And they're not in your jail property. Here's the photo. We took all the shoes for Andrews. Here's the shoes that are up in your property. And here's a series of photos of all the shoes that we took from your residence. And what we can say with no doubt whatsoever is these shoes here at the picture video are not any of these other shoes that we photographed. So,
I have no idea.
well, there's certainly rougher looking shoes in the group that we photographed that you held on to, so that's another thing to consider.
Through the course of the investigation, Lieutenant, were you ever able to locate that shirt or those shoes?
No, we did not.
And the shirt that we're referring to in this footage is the striped shirt?
Yes, a striped short sleeve polo.
The next clip, page 9, in continuing with that conversation somewhat, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about where he may have gotten the shoes that he was wearing that night?
Yes.
And I'll just let the clip speak for itself.
I actually got all these shoes from her ex-boyfriend.
Oh, okay.
And you probably noticed in your SIU, there was a black dude who a while back got busted with crack cocaine like 2 or 3 years ago. He smoked with a stripper girl. I don't remember her name, but them were all his, like except the blue ones, baby blue ones. Let me see that thing. Like the baby blue ones and the Loves, the Nikes, and the gray ones are pretty much the ones I bought. But like I got them and like a few other shoes from her. And that's where I might have left them with, might have took them shoes and changed them for a different pair of shoes.
And then similar conversation kind of kept going, and I'm looking at page 10 and 11 more about shoes.
Yes.
And that's where I got most of them shoes from, like say 4 or 5 pairs, so I might have switched them out.
With what?
They might have been too small, and I might have switched them out for the Jordans or for the other Nikes, the red and white ones.
Switched them out with her?
Because that's where I got the shoes, they were lighter
Did you
shoes.
go back to her and say, okay, you don't fit?
Or, yeah, or I might want to wear another pair.
When you were talking about clothing with Mr. Torgerson, did you have a conversation with him about the shirt he was wearing later in surveillance footage, a black shirt?
Yeah, we did.
Oh, and page 14, copy.
That shirt, do you recognize that shirt?
Pretty much top stitching shirt. Turn that up. That's why he comes up with the shirt on.
And after that, directing counsel to page 15 and 16, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about, continuing about wearing the same shoes in the surveillance footage and the shirt being inside out?
Yeah.
It appears you're wearing the same shoes there, would you agree with that?
Yeah,
You
that's
think the
the
shirt
exact
is
definition.
back?
With the shirt.
White shirt?
Flavor sensor. Yeah.
All right, during the December 21st of 2011 interview, did you again, you and Detective Holtz have another conversation about whether or not Mr. Torgerson called E's phone referring to Eric Mahomes?
Yes, we did.
And this is page 17.
Is that why you called Eric's phone?
That's what I said, there's a lot of E's in my phone.
So your understanding at this point was that Mr. Torgerson was continually denying calling Eric Mahomes?
Yes. Or Eric's phone,
Thank you, Eric. What did I say?
calling Eric.
Thank you. Did you ask Mr. Torgerson specifically on that December 21st date if he had seen Stephanie that night?
Yes.
Remember if Stephanie wanted to ride from you that night?
I never seen Stephanie that night.
Page, please, was that?
20. Then, did you end up having additional conversation with Mr. Torgerson, and this is page 27, about the fact that people had indicated throughout the course of the investigation that Stephanie was looking for a ride that night?
Yes.
And
Well, I'll object, that would be hearsay.
I'm not using it for the truth of the matter asserted, it just lays foundation for the portion of the clip that we're playing.
Move to strike.
Okay, but state's not using them for the truth of the matter?
No, it's just to lay foundation for the conversation that happened subsequently, because that's not,
Because that's not what, sir? It's not what, ma'am?
it's just not in the clip, so it might, the context would have been difficult without that.
Overruled.
And this is page 27, I think.
She told multiple people.
She probably did, just to throw them off. That way they would keep bugging her. You know, that's part of the game. You put shit on other people so they'll quit bugging you. And why not put it off on me? Because my name's Spider. People don't fuck with me. That's my reptile, you know. People hate me, but they don't fuck with me. I get what I want and I do what I please.
After that, directing counsel to pages 31 to 33, there have been some names brought up in testimony. Jake Natowski and Jeff Wurs, did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson as to whether or not he knew those people or any involvement he had?
Yes, Detective Holtz brought that up in the interview.
Pages 31 to...
33.
You're pretty resistant with her. Who's Jake?
Jay?
He likes to smoke crack.
Is that doctor?
No.
No, that's not.
We haven't hanging around with Jeff Ford. Smoke crack. He's an older guy.
Jay.
Yeah, you're calling him on that.
Jay Kristopher.
He's an
Oh,
older guy.
yeah.
I don't know where he is. He's an older guy.
I don't know.
He's kind of an older
Like I
guy.
said, I know a lot of people in that crazy stuff.
We can go get photos of these guys.
Yeah, do that. I don't remember that. I don't remember. Jay Kristopher. I'm not sure that's Jay.
And I'm here, we call Eric and Stephanie. This is the 11:47 phone call.
Mm.
Were you trying to get the dough or something? So just so we're straight up with each other, do you call Eric's phone and you know Stephanie's going to answer? You know he's in jail at that time. What do you think is going to do his phone?
I don't know, I just said I had another email to my phone right now.
And in that conversation with Mr. Torgerson, was your understanding that when Detective Hull said 11:47, that was referring to a PM phone call?
Yes.
The next one that I'm looking at, directing counsel to page 38, additional conversation about calling Eric's phone and talking to Stephanie in the early morning hours of October 10th.
Yes.
So Chris, can you tell us why you were calling Eric and Stephanie at 3:46 in the morning?
If I did, it was a mistake, because I was not trying to call them.
You weren't trying to get dope.
I was trying to get dough, but not from them.
Why not?
Because he was locked up.
And in this interview, did you again ask Mr. Torgerson if he had seen Stephanie that night?
Yes.
Directing counsel to page 46.
But just whether or not you will. Was she a bitch? Did you say something to you that night?
I didn't say that night.
Again, to that same interview, did Mr. Torgerson make any comments about if he wanted to get a hold of Stephanie and or Eric, whether he would call before he would arrive at their apartment?
Yes.
And directing counsel to page 34.
54.
Oh, sorry, I can't read my own writing. 54.
So would you have to call ahead of time and tell them to be there or ring the doorbell on the bottom?
Well, I always call before I go.
And then the next two, just so we don't have to stop in between, did you ask him specifically if he went to Stephanie's that night?
Yes, we did.
And did you ask him if he knew where Stephanie Lowe was during that interview?
Yes.
Sorry.
So it's totally beyond the realm of possibility that you weren't expecting that night.
No,
Do you want me to replay that one?
Yes, please, if you could start 63 to 66.
63 and 66, they're two separate ones. The first one is 63, second 66. I'm sorry, Councilman.
So it's totally beyond the realm of possibility that you weren't expecting that night.
no.
And then 66.
She didn't have anything to do with it, how do you know where she is?
What do you mean? I don't know where she is.
And then finally, in this interview, did you and Detective Holtz have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about changing his clothes and his stop snitching shirt?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And that starts at the bottom of page 72, but the recording actually starts on page 73.
I've had a shirt forever. I
And
don't
you're
know
wearing it
why.
inside out. How the hell would you
But
do
that I
that?
do it plenty of times.
And why are you changing your clothes? Where's your shirt go?
I don't know, that's my
Where's
very
your shoes
comfortable.
go? All this stuff that could prove that you're not involved, nowhere to be found. What are we left to assume here, Chris?
If you go through all my things that I've had, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's him, that's normal. I've gone through shoes and clothes so many times, it is,
Yeah, yet you still have shoes that are 5 and 6 years old that you first had when you came up here.
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense either.
Mm.
Chris, we're trying. We're trying here.
I'm trying to help you too, I do not know where she's at.
So then, Lieutenant Kolb, the final interview, 9/17 of 14, almost 3 years later, right?
Yes.
And was that the contact that you and Detective Holtz had with Mr. Torgerson where he finally indicated where Stephanie was?
Yes.
And the page numbers, there's 3 clips, and just for counsel, I'm going to be looking at 13, 14, and 15.
This is what we're finding out.
I mean, I'm not going to incriminate myself on that. Well, as soon as you take me, as soon as you'll find her. So if you don't want to find her today, then I guess you're going to have to wait till,
We do want to find her today.
Okay, we'll take you.
We want to find her yesterday.
I'll send it to her.
During the course of any of these interviews, did Mr. Torgerson show any emotion at all?
Just some at the that last interview in September of 2014.
Did he ever indicate to you throughout the phase of your investigation and interviews that anyone else had committed the crime of homicide of Stephanie Lowe?
No.
I think I skipped a clip in the playing, so I apologize. Is that the November one?
That's the November 7th.
I'm going to go back to the November 7th interview and looking at
Page 29.
page 29. Did you have a conversation with Mr. Torgerson about a previous information or previous conversation that he had with Detective Mary Wilbernese?
Yes.
And did you ask him about whether or not he had told her that he had taken the vote on October 10th of 2010?
Yeah, we asked him about that.
And do you have the page numbers correct?
29 and 30.
Yeah.
And then later on, we didn't get that information right away, by the way. This is a few months after the fact. That happened, that information as well. Because based on this report, did you mention that Detective Walker knew that you'd taken a vote from?
Sorry for that disconnect. Now, there was some earlier testimony, and you weren't present, regarding the Jeep of Kristopher Torgerson. Did you end up getting that Jeep within the custody of the Wausau Police Department through the course of the investigation?
Yes, we did.
And did you create a reenactment of what you perceived as Mr. Torgerson's Jeep driving by near Stephanie Lowe's apartment by the Denmark Tavern on October 10th in the early morning hours?
Yes.
And when did this reenactment take place, if you recall?
We had made one attempt at that, I believe it was in April. I want to say the year of 2014. I'm not sure on the year.
If your report says 2014, would that be accurate?
Yes.
Go ahead.
At the time, we were interested in finding out. There was a vehicle of interest that appeared very similar to Mr. Torgerson's Jeep that was on video surveillance going past the Denmark Tavern westbound on Thomas Street towards the direction of Stephanie Lowe's apartment 1 block away at the corner of 7th Avenue and West Thomas Street. And so the effort was to drive Mr. Torgerson's Jeep past the Denmark Tavern under night conditions and then just compare the two videos and stills that resulted from the October 10th incident where we collected video from there as well as the reenactment effort.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And I'm not asking you to make any conclusions or comparisons of the vehicles, but is it safe to say your intent was to try to recreate what possibly had happened on October 10th to see if there were similarities?
Yes.
And there was some earlier testimony that the Jeep, a 1995 Jeep, correct?
Yes.
When it got back, it was in pretty rough shape.
Yes.
So did you have to do anything to the Jeep, just light bulb or?
There's the Forest Road, yes, off of Elliott Road, 2658, I believe it is this one, and then this Forest Road 2191 runs off the west end. Elliott Road ends here, and then this Forest Road starts.
Do you know about how far from the cabin Stephanie was found, in miles or in? No?
It had to be within 2 miles.
And then, I know there was some testimony earlier, you weren't present, but when you were making the attempts to find Ms. Lowe, there was some testimony that Mr. Hawkins had attempted to help you locate Stephanie and that there was a wrong Forest Road. What area was he taking you to, if you remember?
He took us, indicated here on 2191, this Forest Road here, and about this area is what he recalled. You could tell he wasn't certain, but there were a lot of similarities, I would argue, between what we saw here in this area and over here just across this marshy area where we did find her.
About how far apart are those two areas that you pointed to? And just so the record reflects accurately, you're in the area where Mr. Hawkins took you. It looks like it's in the center, slightly above and slightly to the left area.
As the crow flies, the distance here is, I would say, a mile or less.
I'd ask for the admission of Exhibit 277.
No objection. And will be received.
Could we just approach for a second?
One. Be ready to go.
Thank you.
I will.
You may be seated. We're in recess. sit down, I just need to talk to the lawyers about how to get in the clips. To be better on the record.
Oh, yeah.